Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community is C-Class Japanese cars. The first race was at the Hockenheim short circuit, a track that often generates very good racing. We've had lots of fantastic races, whether it be in versus the community or in any general racing championships we've taken part in. This track normally generates good fun. Unfortunately, there was some lag problems. I don't know why this has been occurring the last couple of weeks. We've been having more and more trouble with the servers because we've always had the odd, the occasional lag going on in a race. Last 2 weeks have been really bad. This first race was pretty heavily affected by it. As you can see, the second two races, weren't too bad. Or I didn't notice anything particularly bad with them. But yeah, there was quite a bit of lag going on, and MX-5 gets turned around in an incredibly laggy incident. Husky, in the blue RX-7, his car was rather rush built. He didn't even have time to paint it. A 5-minute versus the community car build in this case. His car came from sort of 9th on the grid, managed to avoid all the laggy chaos, and ended up fighting for the lead by the end of the first lap. He's on the outside of a FairLadyZ. There's a flying Datsun. Ignore that, it's not important. As he goes to the outside, does a cutback, finds himself back on the inside. There's some more laggy, jumpy cars around, and Husky finds himself in the lead with a rather quick car, actually. The RX-7 was a very fast straight-line speed car. The FairLadyZ is alongside an MX-5 as they run into the first corner. It is very rare you get two cars wide through there. That is a terrifying place to be too wide. They get away without any major incidents, and then there is some more lag as they come into the second corner. I too had a very good start. I got a bit unlucky in this versus the community. I spent most of my time starting at the back or towards the back of the grid. However, I also quickly made my way through and found myself battling with a Nissan Skyline. I was driving a Toyota 2000 GT. I believed that I could make this a half-decent speed car. It appears not, as I was one of the slowest in a straight line. You could see how much of a gap the Skyline has pulled on me on the start-finish straight. My sort of theory with this car, as there's a Mitsubishi going side by side with an MX-5, is that this vehicle starts off fairly light. I think it's about 2,600 pounds. So I didn't put any weight reduction on here. I put race tyres on the car, race brakes, race suspension, I think. Yeah, I did. No weight reduction though, so I could focus on power. This has got, I think, like 220, 230 horsepower, which is not bad for a C-Class. I've raced B-Class cars that have under 200 horsepower and been very fast around a lap of a track. So I thought I'd get a bit more straight line speed out of this car. It just seems apparently not. As yeah, I was one of the slower cars in a straight line. It was though very good through the corners, even without the rate reduction. It was a very good handling vehicle, and sure enough, I get a better drive out of this corner, get myself on the inside into the hairpin, and the Skyline can't cover the inside. He tries and goes all the way around the outside. It would have worked had it not been for a big slide on the exit. Not sure if he put a wheel over the curb, and yeah, just spun the car. I managed to go keep myself on the outside, swoop in, and get the position into the final corner. As per usual, Hockenheim was making things interesting as we have a Mitsubishi FTO against a FairLadyZ. This is where the building of your car comes in. I say this almost every week because there's always a battle that goes like this. The FairLadyZ is the faster car here in a straight line. The Mitsubishi FTO though is a lot better through the corners. The problem is the Mitsubishi will be faster over the course of a lap as well. However, it's having a really tough time finding its way past the Datsun. The reason why Hockenheim is such a good place for racing, why we have so much overtaking going on here, is that you can overtake on almost every corner because there's sort of a semi-long straight followed by a big braking zone, followed by another semi-long straight, followed by another big braking zone, and it's sort of like the bigger braking zones is where you get the overtaking. And since most of the corners here have fairly large braking zones, that's why you get the overtaking. The problem is, if you are in the car that is slower in a straight line, actually getting past somebody is very tricky because you won't be anywhere near them when it comes to the braking zone to try and outbrake them to get on the inside. Even if you have significantly better brakes, it can be quite tricky. This was the story at the front as well. Husky's Mazda was much faster in a straight line than the MX-5. Well, I say much faster. It was fast enough to keep him ahead of the MX-5, despite the MX-5 being all over him in the corners. You can see they're side by side through the final corners. The MX-5 is looking every which way he can to try and get past the RX-7, the very noisy RX-7 as well, those things. And they come on to the front straight. The MX-5, can just do absolutely nothing about it. He can keep up, he's faster over the course of the lap, he just can't find a way past. And if Husky doesn't make a mistake, it's incredibly hard to get past. It was really tough getting past Of course, if you have the car that's built for the speed, it's probably going to be harder to drive. Again, Husky's going very, very defensive, locks the brakes up into the second corner, gets away with it. Yeah, it's harder to drive the car that's got the more power, so you're more likely to make a mistake. But if you keep it all together, if you defend very well, you can make it really hard to overtake. Further back, the midfield was still all arguing over what I think was 5th place, if I've remembered correctly. This time the Mitsubishi is battling with the Suzuki Liana, I think that is, painted like the Mitsubishi Evo Time Attack car, just to confuse everybody. And again, it was a similar story with this one. The Mitsubishi was fast through the corners, but wasn't quite as quick as the Suzuki in a straight line. It's a little bit more evenly matched, this battle. Admittedly, it isn't a rather odd race, these two cars going against each other. Wouldn't normally see them racing out on track. The Mitsubishi is looking for a way past, maybe trying to get the inside for the next couple of corners. Hasn't quite got the acceleration of the Suzuki, and again, it's going to be too far back by the time it comes to the hairpin. It's not got the speed. It would have to be a very, very big dive, and it's unlikely in C-Class for you to have that much better brakes to be able to do that sort of a dive from that distance back. There's a bit of an overtake going on in the background as well. You can overtake into this final corner, but the Mitsubishi is too far back. At the front, and after holding off the MX-5 rather valiantly for 4 or 5 laps, eventually the Mazda finds its way past, go around the outside of the first corner. Very very tough place to overtake in that manner. It would be overtake of the evening if the MX-5 hadn't run a little bit wide on the exit, not by much, but yeah, may have had a few wheels off the track on that. Still, an incredible place to get an overtake on. There's no contact between the two of them. Husky's now trying to find a way back, but it's unlikely. The MX-5 is, I wouldn't say significantly quicker, but it's quite a bit quicker over the course of the lap. And yeah, with the next few fast corners, Husky just couldn't keep up. I think it was the next lap that was the final lap. I had been absolutely flying in the Toyota, having finally sort of cleared all of the traffic, got into a bit of free air, and had my TV turn off at one point. I'd caught up right to the back of these pair. I'd been hoping Husky could hold the MX-5 off for a little bit longer, and then slowing each other down to allow me to catch up. A couple more laps, my Toyota might have had them. However, the MX-5 is going to take the win, having spent a long time battling with Husky. Husky did a great job of holding him off, and in the end it was a very good overtake for the MX-5 to take the win. Further back though, it was to be a little bit closer of a finish. The blue Skyline got very sideways on the exit of the hairpin yet again, and the Suzuki was right behind him as they come into the final couple of corners. The Skyline goes very, very defensive. He's going to run wide on the exit, allowing the Suzuki up the inside onto the final corner. You would expect the Suzuki be able to get the position, having taken a better line through there. However, the speed of the Skyline means he can just put his foot down and out-accelerate the Suzuki as they go across the line. And that is the advantage of having the car with the straight line speed. If you can keep it through the corners, yeah, you do have a pretty decent advantage. We move on to the second race at Tsukuba. Husky starting right at the back of the field for this one. I think I got a bit lucky with my start position somewhere further up. Tsukuba is a little bit of an interesting track. We often see incidences in this first corner. It's so wide, people think, yeah, sure, we can fit 3 cars wide, and you can't really. Everybody got away with mind bumping into the first corner, into the hairpin, and there is a Civic that gets sort of caught up with an RX-7, just people running out of space and nobody really having anywhere to go. However, the first lap had been, or the first few corners had been relatively clean, as I said, a little bit of bumping, but certainly not the worst we've seen. A lot better than the Civics that had a big accident at the hairpin. An RX-7 gets a little bit of understeer, I think, there. It's actually surprisingly easy to do that. You look at it and you think that why have they done that? It is a lot easier than you might think to just try and carry a bit too much speed through there and suddenly find yourself on the grass and in the wall. As well into the back straight, Husky has made up quite a few positions on this opening lap. Problem is when you start like right at the very back, unless you get lucky and you can kind of weave your way through the traffic, it's very easy to get caught up in all of these battles and lose an awful lot of time. And in all of this, while these are squabbling over sort of 8th and 9th and so on, the leaders are getting away at the front, and Husky is keen to make his way through the pack as quick as possible. Looking at the outside of the first corner, unlikely. You can do it, and Husky is about to get the move done. You're unlikely to actually get the move done going around the outside of the first corner, but if you can stay on the outside, you're on the inside for this next section, which is what Husky has done to get past the Honda Civic. Yeah, it's pretty tough doing that. in keeping your car there. It is quite a long way around the outside of that first corner. It's a long corner as we all run underneath the Dunlop Bridge. There's a big slide from a Civic. I'm going to presume that's a rear-wheel drive Civic. There's a big slide from something else in there as well. As we run up towards the hairpin now, Husky's up behind a Suzuki Liana, and am I pronouncing that right? I think that's how it's pronounced. And behind a different Toyota 2000 GT. At the fronts and things were much calmer. It was much more relaxed here. As the lead three, we just escaped the field pretty much. We kind of ended up in a weird sort of scenario. We were kind of equidistant from each other. We weren't really gaining on each other, or we weren't losing time, so we could see, well, the leader could see the two cars behind him, we could see the cars in front, we couldn't do anything about catching up. A rather frustrating scenario, especially when it was me who was not catching up to a Nissan Versa. Yes, the Versa was proving to be rather quick. It's a surprising car, that Versa. It really does very well. You can see how far ahead of the rest of the field we are as well in just a couple of laps. The midfield was certainly rather busy. Husky had a little bit of a spin. I'm not quite sure what happened with him and a Toyota. They had a bit of a coming together. And Husky ended up dropping back through the field and was now working his way back up. The Prius was slowly dropping through the order. It was struggling to keep up with the rest of the cars. Runs a little bit wide into the hairpin. And the Civic has a dive up the inside. There's an RX-8, I think there's a Mitsubishi Eclipse, is it? Somewhere involved in there, and a Celica Supra. All involved in this little group. They run down the back straight. Amazingly, the Prius is actually pretty quick. I think the Civic may have had a tiny bit of engine damage. Never quite sure when it comes to Forza Replay. Civic gets a big slide going on. Don't really want to be doing that in the middle of a race. The Mazda RX-8 now dives up the inside of the Prius. Just doesn't quite have the grip, quite have the handling of the other cars. It did admirably, whatever, on speed and acceleration. The Civic's going sideways again. The Mazda's going to dive up the inside. The Mitsubishi Eclipse is on the inside of the Prius. Don't really want to be on the inside for this, because now you end up on the outside for the next sort of corner. The RX-8 is now having a look at the back of the Civic. The Civic goes very defensive. A little bit of a bump between the Mitsubishi and the Prius. Prius running a little bit wide. Mitsubishi can now get up the inside of him as well. Lots of position changes going on further back, which is what we like to see. We like to see racing throughout the field. I think this is in 5th and 6th, I think. We've got these two battling. They had sort of escaped that little battle group further back and had got quite a distance up the road. They were gradually catching the car in 4th. I think it was a Nissan Silvia that they were catching, but it was a very slow process. They can just about see him in the distance. The Suzuki was, again, it was a car that surprised me with its speed. It was actually faster than this Mazda RX-7. Again, this one, I would guess anyway, from looking at the speed of the thing, is more built for handling, considering it's running full aero as well. And whereas the Suzuki hasn't got any aero on it at all, I presume it's built a little bit more for speed. It's kind of odd, though, to say that the Suzuki is faster than an RX-7 in a straight line. Back towards the front, this is a little bit later on in the race, and I'd finally got into a groove with my Toyota. It's a bit of a weird car, this one. I can't really explain it. I'm not sure if it's the tyres, maybe it doesn't like cold tyres, or maybe it's just me taking a bit of time getting used to this car on different tracks. Because for the first few laps, I could not catch up to the vehicles in front. Then all of a sudden, things started to click, and I was right up behind the Versa. Then we had a little problem. The Versa was not massively quicker, but noticeably quicker than my Toyota in a straight line, which meant overtaking was really rather hard. The Versa was parking his car on the inside of every corner, and no matter what I did, I could not find a way past. We come onto the back straight, and the Versa just pulls out a big enough margin so that I can't have a dive, I can't have an attack into this final corner, which is where I can carry so much more speed through here. I can be so much later on the brakes than the Versa. I just cannot carry enough speed through here. You can see I get a much better exit as we run up towards the first corner. The first corner is probably the best overtaking opportunity you're going to get, but I can't get my car up the inside. The Versa does a very good job of defending. I tried to hold it around the outside, but again, I haven't quite got enough grip over the Versa to be able to do that. And again, we're now onto sort of a small straight, and the Versa just accelerates away from me. Again, he's covering the inside. There's nothing I can do about that. My best opportunity is at the hairpin at sort of the end of the course, towards the end of the course. The problem is, even if I got past him there, he'd be straight back past me in a straight line, which meant overtaking this car was incredibly tricky. It was incredibly frustrating. It was good fun, but yeah, rather frustrating. Cut to the hairpin again. I'm trying to do a bit of a cutback now. The problem is, even if I got a cutback working, even if I got up the inside, the Versa would just out-accelerate me in a straight, and there was absolutely nothing I could do. further back. This sort of, I think this is for the lower parts of the top 10, not quite sure what positions it were. These battled for most of the race. They were squabbling over these positions for an awful long time. Mitsubishi finds himself on the outside of the RX-8s to go into the hairpin. The Celica Supra's involved as well, just in case there's a bit of a coming together between all of them. They get around the corner cleanly, and amazingly, the Eclipse gets the overtake done. For me, that's going to be an overtake of the evening, going around the outside of the hairpin. Normally, if you do that kind of manoeuvre, the RX-8 sorry, is having a look at the inside on the final corner, not quite far enough alongside, had a big lockup as well. Normally, if you go around the outside of the hairpin, what you'll end up doing is doing a cutback on the exit. You'll have your car on the inside, and you'll either out-accelerate him or you'll overtake him into the final corner. Very rare I see a pass you go all the way around the outside and keep it on the outside the entire way. Yeah, that's a pretty damn good overtake. The Celica's looking for a position as well. At the front though, with me and the Versa squabbling, the MX-5 extended his lead and was pretty much unchallenged for most of the race. The Integra is, I think it's an Integra, is a lap down, so don't worry about them. Yeah, MX-5 got to the front, drove a very clean race, pretty much drove away from the field, and yeah, it's going to take the victory. The battle for second raged on for the final few laps. I think it was 3 or 4 laps, and I threw absolutely everything I could at the back of the Versa. If Forza didn't turn off damage in the replays, there would be a few scratch marks on the back of the Versa. I tried everything. I threw everything I could at this car, and I could not find a way past. As we come into the final corner, my last hope was I could get better drive out of this final corner. I got a better drive, I just could not beat him to the line. We finished very close between the two of us. It was great fun. Frustrating to have been beaten by a Versa, but it was an excellent fun race. Those Versas are really rather quick. We didn't have the closest of finishes though. No, that would go to Husky, having made his way back up to this battle. Well, it was sort of the 5th, 6th and 7th place battle that he ended up in. As he runs around the final corner, it looks like he's not going to get the position. However, the ready orange RX-7 gets a big slide on the exit. Husky dives up the inside and gets the place by thousandths of a second, I think it was, or hundredths of a second. It was a tiny, tiny margin between them. If the start line had been any further back, Husky wouldn't have got the position. We move on to the third and final race at the somewhat notorious Maple Valley Raceway. I really quite like this track. It's a really fast, it's a really flowing circuit. It's great fun to drive around. The reason why we tend not to use this track very often in a versus the community, is a little bit of lag going on, is the curbs. The curbs are terrible. It is so easy to roll a vehicle here, so we tend not to run versus the community too many times on here. However, I do really like this track. That's why we're running it this time around. Civic did a very good overtake on me actually to dive up the inside. I only saw him there very, very late. Scared the crap out of me when I realised quite where it was. Didn't realise I left such a wide gap for somebody to dive up the inside. This back straight sort of thing is where my car does struggle. However, I do have a lot of grip. I do have very good brakes on this thing. And as we come towards the corner after the straight, after the bridge, I have a big dive up the inside of the Civic. The MRS can't hold the line either. I've made up a couple more places. We head down towards the next corner. Again, I'm on maximum attack at the moment as I get up the inside of a Datsun. Now got on the inside of a Skyline. You can see how much grip my car has. I can really take a very tight line around there. Carry quite a lot of speed. Don't really want to be going side by side up this hill. Very, very scary. Thank you to the Skyline for leaving plenty of room. You can go side by side up there, but you've got to kind of be aware that there's somebody on your inside. One of the Civics in front runs very wide. I too run very wide. Not quite as wide as the Civic. I think the MRS was off in the background as well. It's very easy to do that on that corner, just to try and carry. It's like a deceptive corner. It starts off quite a shallow corner and then becomes a lot tighter as you get to the top. It's very easy. It's very easy to run cars wide. If you race this track regularly, or you've been in plenty of races here, you will see many cars run wide there. The CRX one ran wide at the top of the hill, and it may have been a little bit scary on that final corner. CRX didn't realise quite how close I was as I dive up the inside. You do not want to go too wide through that final corner. You really, really don't. Hence why I backed off and waited to overtake until after we'd got round the corner. Or more like once I saw the CRX had run wide, that's when I dived up the inside. A little bit further on, you think the Civic is on for an impressive overtake. However, it's the CRX that gets the dive on the skyline. I'm not 100% sure that overtake was intentional. It looked a little bit, although it could be lag, it looked a little bit like the CRX was under brakes and realised he'd broken a bit too late and was locked up and kind of fired his car at the inside to try and avoid the skyline. We've all done it at some point, when you have one of those overtakes where it's just sort of close your eyes and please hope it works. That might have been one of them. If it wasn't, it was a massively impressive overtake to get your car stopped that late compared to everybody else. If it wasn't intended, still good car control to get it turned in. At the front, and again, it was the lead 3 that had scampered away from the rest of the field. I think I was in 5th, there was another MR2. We kind of fought our way through the field, lost a little bit of time on this lead group. We were sort of just about in touch. You may see us in the background, no you won't. You just see the MR2 as the camera pans away. Yeah, this lead 3 had really got a fairly sizable margin over the rest of the field. And it was Husky's RX-7 that was the quickest of the lot in a straight line. The MR2 was probably the best of the handling cars. The Fairlady Z was a bit in the middle. As you can see, Husky's car really rather quick in a straight line. He's on the inside for one of the better overtaking spots at Maple Valley here. However, the Datsun has got an awful lot of grip and manages to hold the position all the way around the outside. Pretty tough to do, actually. You've got to keep your foot in, and yeah, you need a car with a lot of grip if you're going to go for that sort of a manoeuvre. Still, Husky's on the inside trying to have a look, but he can't quite get the move done. The Datsun's just got a little bit too much grip. Further back, and it was the midfield again that was proving to be fairly close. Wasn't quite sort of the constant changing of positions, but they're all fairly close, and as the Civic runs a little bit wide, he saves himself from running over the curves, which the 2000 GT didn't, and had a big roll. The Civic avoided the curves, however did lose a couple of places in doing so. Really, it is much better to do what the Civic did than go over the curves. As they run to the final corner, I thought the Civic was going to have a dive there, and that's a very silly place to have a dive. When I first watched that, I closed my eyes and hoped that it didn't happen, and the Civic did the clever thing, the wise thing of backing out of that, because otherwise that would have been a very nasty incident. They all got away safely though, with that, which surprised me. A couple of laps later, and things were all close at the front now. The Datsun was kind of finding a rhythm, was caught up to the back of the MR2 and was now trying to find a way past. It seems to have a lot more grip, or much better drive out of that first corner. The MR2 though is on the inside. It's quite a long way going around the outside of these next two fast corners. The MR2 though puts a wheel on the curb, doesn't roll it but gets a big slide and loses the position to the Datsun. Husky then comes flying past in the much quicker Mazda. He's now on the inside yet again for this long straight, which is where you want to be. You're going to try and get the overtake. They both go flying side by side underneath the bridge. And will it be a repeat of last time? Husky's on the inside. He's got past the Datsun, however just can't get it stopped. Runs a little bit wide on the exit. Datsun does the cutback. Now he's on the inside for the next few corners, or for the next long corner, which is where you want to be. Husky tries. He tries valiantly to go around the outside, but you're not going to go around the outside of the car that has more grip than you. It's that's pretty near impossible to do, especially with very, very highly skilled drivers who know what they're doing. So they run up the top of the hill. Husky can't quite do anything about it. The MR2 is now right back in the fight as they squabble, of course. They're slowing each other down, and while all of this fighting has been going on, me and fourth place were catching up to this lead group. Husky's luck was about to change though. They'd actually made, in the final few corners, they made a little bit of a gap back to the MR2. However, Husky ran wide, put a wheel over the curb, and Maple Valley was to claim, I think, its second or third victim as Husky ends up on his roof. While his car was not stuck on its roof, it kind of ended up flipping back onto its wheels, I should have said. It did sustain quite a lot of damage, as you can see, and is smoking rather heavily. And again, after the first two laps of struggling a little bit, I'd found a groove, found a rhythm with my Toyota, and was actually going really rather quick. Ignore the weird ghost trail. I don't know what's going on there. There is a really weird thing happening on this replay. There's a ghost car and smoke and lights and stuff. While I was pushing my car as hard as I could, I may have pushed it a little bit too much. Just clipped the curb on the inside up the hill, trying to gain some time on the MR2 in front, and ended up in the wall. And a little bit of a shame, I actually didn't do any major damage to my car. Well, I killed the aero, but none of the internals were broken in this, which surprised me. I didn't expect that. We've got the weird ghost of, I don't know what's going on. It's all a little bit strange. Yeah, what's going on there. Either way, my Toyota had sustained minor damage considering the crash that I had just had. I wasn't the only one to have a problem with these curbs. The characteristics of the Maple Valley curbs, I don't know why they are quite as bad as they are, but after a few laps people are kind of settling in and they're really trying to push their cars. That is the tiniest of clips on the curb for the Skyline there as it goes for a tumble and ends up on his roof. That was one of the smallest clips I've seen on a curb for a car to end up on his roof. The guy backed out of the race, thankfully, to avoid anybody driving into his car. Bad place to end up stuck on your roof. A Civic as well was to run a little bit wide on the top curbs and fall over there. Again, managed to recover. I don't think he had any major damage from that one either, except for aero. Like the car, don't think the car was smoking. Doesn't. The replay is always a little bit dodgy with this, but yeah, you can get away with a roll without sort of major damage sometimes. But yeah, you don't really want to be ending up on your roof if you can avoid it. At the front though, and the Datsun had on the last few laps pulled a fairly big margin back to the MR2s. The third place car caught rapidly up to the back of second, however would run out of laps. A few more laps, or maybe even one more lap, and there would have been a change for second position. However, it is the Datsun that after Husky's roll is pretty much unchallenged for the lead. Didn't make any mistakes, didn't get brave on any of the curbs, which is really what you have to do here at Maple Valley. In the end, despite my roll and me having a roll on the final corner of the final lap, I managed to limp my car across the line. I ended up 4th somehow. Husky ended up down in 9th with a rather poorly engine. Anyway, it was a pretty eventful, pretty exciting versus the community. This one, as it is expected. Normally, the lower the class of car we run, the closer the racing is, and especially when we have Hockenheim and Tsukuba going on. There was plenty of good racing. There was unfortunately a bit of lag going on, which was yeah, that was a little bit of a shame. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I can't really do anything about it though. This week things will be better. Speaking of this week, the next FailRace versus the community shall be on Thursday, the 27th of February. It shall be at 7 PM GMT time. We're going to be staying on Forza 4 for this week because more people have Forza 4. Versus the community is not so much about the video that comes out of it, it's more about people taking part. And since more people have Forza 4 at the moment, we will still do more Forza 4 than Forza 5. Also, there are some problems with Forza 5. Most notably, last time we did it, the voice chat in the lobby was utterly broken. It was so terrible. It was like listening to aliens, and that was all it was. It made it really hard to concentrate, to drive, to organise. We will go back on Forza 5 though, don't worry. Not next week, the week after. I'm just hoping it'll be fixed and it'll be working alright. But the next FailRace versus the community, as I said, on the 27th, is going to be Mitsubishi Evos versus Subaru Imprezas in A-Class. Sounds like fun to do a sort of a rivalry. We may do some more of these in the future. It sounds interesting to settle the rivalries on the track and to see what cars come out on top. You can do whatever upgrades you like to make them A-Class. If there are drivetrain swaps, you can do them, you can use them, you can change the diff, you can mess about with anything you like on the tuning of the vehicles. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what car comes out on top. If you want to take part in that event, then you can go to our forums. There'll be a link in the description. Go to the FailRace versus the community section. The sign-up stuff will all be in there. However, that is it for today. So thank you very much for watching. And until next time, goodbye.